Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink, it is time for some PathOfExile discussion. There's not much news that's come out of Grinding Gear Games about patch 3.25, I still think it's 4 weeks away, but we'll get some clarification on that over the next little while. However, there is some very important news that's come out from one of the most important third-party tools PathOfExile players use. Arguably, the three most important tools for PathOfExile players are first, Path of Building, second, Filterblade, and third, POE. This video is going to be on the second one, Neversink's website Filterblade, which is the most widely used loot filter customization tool in PathOfExile. This is a website that's designed with two things in mind. It's extremely new player friendly, but at the same time it's extremely veteran player friendly as well, because it has a whole bunch of knobs that you can adjust in order to change exactly how your loot filter works. Now, the big changes that have been made are in the Customize tab. We'll get to that in a sec, but I want to quickly showcase the basics of this in case this video gets seen by people that are newer to PathOfExile than most of my channel's viewership are. So firstly, you'll be able to choose between designing your loot filter to be optimized for the minute-to-minute economy of the current softcore league, the minute-to-minute economy of the current hardcore league, Neversink's best estimate as to what a softcore league would look like in the absence of some of the fluctuations that takes place, or alternately, something that's specifically set up for the Ruthless game mode. Loot filters designed for Ruthless don't play well with loot filters designed for everything else, so we'll ignore that one and we'll go with the softcore minute-to-minute league economy at the moment. After this, you can choose just how much the loot filter hides. It's important to note that these words are designed to be accurate for a very new player to PathOfExile who's still in that moment where items on the ground are wondrous and they're interested in picking up a lot more than a veteran player would be. If you're a veteran player, I'm really just defining this to mean you've got 3 or more level 90 characters ever in the game, then you'll probably find that what Neversinkh calls strict, you will think of as soft, what Neversinkh calls very strict, you'll think of as regular, what Neversinkh calls uber strict, you'll think of as strict, and what Neversinkh calls uber plus strict, you'll think of as very strict. In short, you'd shift everything a couple of spots along to the left. It's really important here though that Neversinkh does cater to the newest players first and foremost, and the veteran players just learn the exceptions that don't apply to them. That's the reason that these words are chosen the way they are. Anyways, I think that for most people, leveling 1 to 88, you'll typically want to use something akin to strict or semi-strict, and then from level 88 onwards, you'll probably want to look into uber strict, and then once your character is genuinely rich, you'll want to consider going uber plus strict instead, and focusing on being even faster. Scrolling down, you'll see a filter overview section. One thing that's been added at some point, I've never noticed this before, it may have just been added or it may have been something that was added a while ago without me noticing. There is this switch view button which will allow you to see a whole bunch of information at the same time and allow you to just flick through and get a really quick overview of what the loot filter is going to look like. However, it's important to go into the Customize tab because you'll get a lot more information in there. In the Customize tab, there's a couple of key things that are worth noting. Firstly, if you see an icon of a Chaos Orb here, what this means is that these items are priced based upon dynamic prices that can update a lot. Additionally, it's generally the case that these will have some quite valuable items in them. If we expand out the currency normal section, and then we'll just skip over the stack tiering mode, just use default here unless you know exactly what you're doing, you'll then be able to go and customize exactly how certain types of currency look. This is where the biggest change is for people who've used Filterblade before. In the past, there were fairly wordy descriptions like God tier 2, high tier, medium tier, etc. for currencies. This being changed into letter grades using the fairly standardized nerd speak of S tier being the term used for A+, and then A tier, B tier, and so on and so forth. S tier is exceptionally good. Anything that's S tier, you want the filter to sing at you for. And generally speaking, Neversinkh's cutoff tends to be that anything 50 chaos and up tends to be marked as S tier. You can have a look here and very quickly say, you know what, I'm just not interested in anything that's E tier. I'm not interested in any of these sorts of rubbish items that are coming up, and you can make those changes in batches. That's something you've always been able to do, it's just a bit faster now than it used to be. Once you're happy with your lowest tier, maybe you decide also that you don't want to have a sound on this tier, but you are interested in seeing the items, and you then make all the sorts of changes that you could make in previous incarnations of Filterblade. You then decide, all right, I'm happy with what currency looks like. I'm now going to jump down to large stacks of currency. I'm going to jump to small stacks of currency and all sorts of other things down the line. So essences, what do I think of essences? All right, so tier 7 essences, deafening essences and corruption only essences. I want them showing, I want the filter singing. Level 6 ones I'll show. Level 5, I'm not fussed about. I'll pick them up if I see them, but I don't want the game singing at me, so I'll turn off my sound and I'll just make it so they're active. And then Wailing, Weeping, Muttering and Whispering, I'm not picking them up at all because I'm a picky person when I'm playing. So those are the changes that you want to make in order to customize the Essence section. You might decide to make different changes than these, but the process is very, very quick and very, very easy now. You can then go through all sorts of other categories. I generally, for instance, like to make sure that all rogue markers are showing, but that they have no sound to them, because there's something I'll always pick up when they drop, but that I'm not really excited about. And then you come up to the other things that have had big changes. Unique items have a number of limitations for how loot filters can display them. Most importantly, loot filters can't tell the difference between different unique items that are on the same base. Wormsmolt and Headhunter. These look exactly the same to a loot filter, and the game does not allow a loot filter to differentiate between the two. So you then have to have a setting for things that are wildly variant tiers, like unique leather belts, unique heavy belts. Those come later. Predictable tiers though, you know what the item's going to be. A unique Siege Axe is always Soul Taker, which is always valuable. A unique Viridian Jewel might be different items, but they're always pretty valuable. On top of that, you have some middle tier uniques, things like Cold Iron Point. An Ezomite dagger that drops in the normal game is always Cold Iron Point. If it drops in Heist, it could also be the replica, and that's always a medium value item. There's also some unique items that only hold value early in the league, and then there's ones you can pretty safely hide on your loot filter as well. And this includes a few things where there's items that you can't get as direct monster drops. For example, Precursor's Emblem is an example of an item that you can't get as a direct drop from monsters. It's something that can be extremely, extremely valuable if you get a lucky one, especially the Sapphire Ring and Topaz Ring variants. They can be extremely, extremely valuable, but it'll never drop from a monster, it'll always come from a vendor, or alternatively as a Divination card hand-in, or as a foil reward, which will stand out. For that reason, you don't need to take Precursor's Emblem into consideration when you're deciding whether or not to show Sapphire Rings or Topaz Rings, because it will never drop. And for that reason, these non-drops, you can safely hide these categories if you want to show less items when you're playing. Now there is a category of unique items that I've been discussing with Neversink exactly what to do with, and these are unique items that have really wide roll ranges. Venter's Gamble is a bit of a standout here because most of the player base consider Venter's Gamble always worth picking up when it's unidentified, but there's a few other items that are Venter's Gamble but different. Black Sun Crest comes to mind as a clear example of this. Divination Distillate's another. It has smaller roll ranges, but a perfect roll, which is 1 in 55, is often worth anywhere from 500 to 1000 Chaos Orbs, and that means that an unidentified Divination Distillate tends to have an average value of about 12C when you ID it. This makes some of these items worth picking up even when a low-rolled version can be quite worthless. If that's something that complicates things, Neversink might make some further adjustments in order to make a separate tier, perhaps with items looking a little bit different. If they're the sort of thing that is not inherently valuable, but that it is valuable if it's got good rolls, or alternately, with items like Sedima's Touch, that are only valuable if they are both good rolls and also get a good corruption on them. Even if those changes take place though, they'll be pretty minor, and it's worth playing around with Filterblade now to get a sense as to exactly how it works. Divination cards use exactly the same logic, and there is an extensive tier list that is based on the current Trade League economy, but you can also then go through and modify things. Maybe you want to be really, really silly, and you decide, I'm going to go into E tier currency rewards, get Reign of Chaos, the most common divination card in the game. I'm going to move it to S tier just so that my loot filter ends up being really funny to use. This is not what I would consider a good idea, but it might be something really funny if you want to set off your loot filters, oh my god, a big drop hit 500 times in a single map when you're juicing enough. Then there's a whole number of other things that you can change. There's a whole section on maps, which I don't believe has changed very much. Scarabs have changed, of course, because 324 overhauled Scarabs. So there's a whole lot of things that you can go through. The other thing that's changed a little bit is rare items. Rare items have changed how they're presented here, and this means that you can have some more flexibility to change things around, but mostly it was about making it more user-friendly. If you want to show amethyst rings for longer, you can, and also if you're in that weird spot where perhaps you need to get a lightning fire 2-stone ring because that's exactly what your character happens to need right now in order to function well, then you can show lightning and fire 2-stone rings, for instance, using some of the options that you've got here, so that you can just pick up a whole bunch of them and just keep IDing them until you get something that is usable for your character, until you can get something extraordinary later. There's a number of other sections here that haven't changed very much, or at least not much that I'm aware of, but that are worthwhile playing around with, especially if you're the sort of person like me that will overhaul your loot filter about 36 hours into a new league. Finally, the Simulate tab has changed and has made it more easy to find a section that I actually didn't know existed. You can import an item from PathOfExile using copy and paste, and then the game will show you how it will look inside your loot filter. Once you're ready to download your filter, you can go down to Export to POE. The Style and Advanced tabs are probably not that important. And you've got a couple of options here. One simple way is just to continue without saving and then click Download. But before you do that, you'll be able to check a few things that are warnings that the Filterblade website is configured to show you. And just ask you, are you really sure that you want to do this? Do you want 6 stacks of chromatic orbs to not show? Because that's the way that I have misconfigured this loot filter at the moment. This is not really something that's good to go. You then want to check every single one of these. So, chromatic orbs. No, I kind of actually do want to show 6 stacks of chromatic orbs. So I can then go and click on that. Then I can say, okay, this is in big stacks. I think we've got E tier currency is hidden, but large stacks of E tier currency, we then want to overwrite that. And we can then say, all right, 6 stack of orb of chance, yes, we'll show that. 6 stack, I think this is chromatic orbs here. We will show those. Maybe they're not there. Maybe they're somewhere else. Yeah, here they are. We'll make sure that all of these are also showing as well. And then we'll go back and have another look at these warnings. 3 stacks of chromes, I'm fine with missing those. Chance orbs, jeweler's orbs, that's all right. Loyalty, Emperor's Luck, Jack in the Box, I'm completely fine with never seeing those. Then at this point, all you need to do is continue without saving, download, and put that into your typical loot filter directory, and you're good to go. Anyways, that is the changes to Filterblade that took place today. Definitely recommend that you get your head around these before trying to customize a loot filter mid-league. If you do find that NeverSync's Filterblade website is really useful, I will put a link to his Patreon down in the description of this video below. Otherwise, I'll leave it there. May your Val orbs have interesting results.